of these away from the polls. This morning, we'll be focusing on two major issues. One has to do with the issue on the ballot box and how it is handled, and to give the public the assurance that all measures are in place to ensure that the ballot is protected and it leads to, or in the wider context of free and fair elections. And I would also provide an update in terms of the claims and objections as of the 7th of June. So these are the two major issues we will be speaking to, and then we give you a bit of information that is for the media relative to the broadcasting of the results on elections night. And Mr. Millette will just give us a rundown on this, but we have an engagement with the media on Friday to walk them through this particular process. So I know I want Mr. Millette to be featured in terms of the demonstration, so I will give way to him, at this time.
Okay, good morning to viewers and listeners wherever you are. As was hinted, we are here this morning to give you an assurance, give you an appreciation for the process. Many persons are not quite too familiar with a process that is being done once a year, or once every 5 years rather. And I'm going to be demonstrating, trying to answer some of the concerns that persons have. I've heard it on the media many times in terms of the ballot and what happens from the start of polls to the end of polls, right on to the dissemination of the results, which is going to be done on that electronic platform. So firstly, I would like to show you a ballot. So this is what the ballot looks like. There are numbers. The ballot is made up of three components. This side here has numbers. It tells you which the constituency the ballot belongs to. Here, there is a corresponding number at the top here. And persons might be concerned, so the presiding officer makes his initial here, but there is also a number. So right here you're seeing that number, which corresponds to this number here. This portion of the ballot here remains in the ballot book, so it is torn off along this line. The ballot is folded from bottom to the top, from the bottom to the top. However, there is a writing here and a line that says do not fold beyond this line. So up to the point where the voter goes into the ballot booth to make his mark, he has the ballot folded. I'm going to fold it. The concern is with some persons whether or not you can tell who the ballot or for whom someone would have voted. It says do not fold beyond this line. So you get your ballot like this to go to the ballot booth. At the top, your number is still here. So you make your mark, it's folded, and it's returned to the presiding officer in this fashion. Why? Because the presiding officer has to see his initials here to ensure that this is a ballot that was given to you by him. Once this is done, even at that point, there's a corresponding number here that's written in the poll book to know here's what I gave John Doe, ballot number 0056. So at this point, we can still know that this ballot belongs to John Doe. However, no one knows for whom he has voted. When the presiding officer collects this ballot, he has to tear off that portion. So at the end, we are left with two pieces. This is the upper portion of the ballot that is torn off with the number on it. So we have this number here. This portion is torn off with the presiding officer's initial. This is kept by the presiding officer. And all that goes into the box is this. There is no marking on this to be able to identify anyone. For whom you decide to cast your vote, you make your mark in that space here. So if you're voting for the triangle, you make your mark here. Some persons again might be looking for a box. We have promotion that is being done. Some of the candidates, when they do their flyers and so, they put a box and put an X inside the box. The law says you make a mark. It can be an X, it can be a tick, whatever, but preferably an X. But there is no box to look at to put your mark inside. So if you're voting for the triangle, you put your mark anywhere in that area. You're voting for this candidate, you put your mark in that area likewise. Again, this is what goes into the box. There is no identifying mark on this ballot. The only mark that's there is the mark that is put by the elector. This would have been folded, and after it has been folded, it would be handed to the voter, but before it is handed, that voter has to immerse his finger into the ink. Once the finger is inserted into the ink, then the ballot is handed to that voter who drops it into the box. Again, the box comes to the presiding officer with all the things that are necessary for polling on that day. It includes the list and all the other supplies that are needed. The box has to be emptied in the presence of everyone. Each candidate is going to have an agent present. Most of the times, the early voters also get the privilege of being there to see that the box is empty, the box is locked and put in a position where it can be visible to all. It's locked with a padlock, and once voting commences, that elector, after immersing his finger in the ink, gets his ballot to insert into the box. There is also a concern that persons have in terms of the security of the documents that have been given to the presiding officer, because a presiding officer has the box at least 3 days before elections. So what can they do with the box? How are we certain that when I come to the polling station and I see a list that is put up there, how am I certain that this is the list where my name is, or if my name is not on the list? Can the presiding officer change the list? Can anything else be done? The office is aware of anything that can happen. Hence, we have implemented security measures to ensure that the authenticity of the documents that are there have been verified and authenticated. So for this, the candidates, along with the agents, they have all been briefed already by the Parliamentary Elections Office, so they know what to look for, they know what to expect. In the ballot box also is a list like this. This tells the presiding officer, which also is shown to the agents, that your box also has seals. There are 3 seals that come in the box. The number of the seals are recorded. The agents are going to verify that the number of the seals that were received are the actual number that's recorded here. However, the list also that is supplied by us has a hidden security number which is covered by this special seal here. So this is a covering, and it has to be scratched with a coin or something to reveal the number. So there is a number recorded behind this here. This again is only scratched on election day in the presence of the agents. So the presiding officers, they have their list and other things in the box. They know what the contents are, but nobody knows what the security number is. This is a number that's provided by us. And this number has to be revealed in the presence of the agents and those who are present for early voting. So again, the presiding officer has no idea what that number is. He has this number hidden here. He has this paper that lists the seal numbers and that hidden number. When they're about to commence voting, that number is that seal is scratched on the list, it is scratched on the paper, and they are compared. Once the numbers match, then you know that this is the list that is issued by the Parliamentary Elections Office for voting. Why did we go through that? The list is available for anyone. Even now as we speak, the machine is printing lists right now. Lists were printed before this final list was printed. So for persons who are unable to interpret the list, because the list has a date, a printed date, most people aren't aware of this. So let's suppose a list that was printed last week before this final list, and the presiding officer has that list in his presence, he could easily switch the list in the box that was given to him 3 days before. So if your name appeared on that list within that claim and objection period, it meant that on that final list, your name would be there, but on the list prior to this, it wouldn't be there. So you show up on polling day and they can't find your name on the list. This is to authenticate. Here's what. So when you go to the polling station on election day and you see there's a list outside, you can look for that number, you can look for that seal here, because it is going to be there. And this is how you know that the list that is up there was a list that was given for voting day. That's the way we can authenticate this process, with this and the other, and the list number that is matching here. When the polls close at 5 p.m., the presiding officer, along with the agents and those persons who are authorized to be in there, they are going to commence the count. There are some balancing of documents that has to be done. You have a number of ballot books, you account for everything. So on that day, I had 200 persons on my list. 150 persons came to vote. I was given 250 ballots. It therefore means that at the close of polls, I must account for my ballots. I was given 250 ballots, fine, 150 persons voted. I must have 100 ballots unused, providing that there has been no spoiled ballots. So again, if you go to make your mark and you realize when you came from there, you have a change of mind, you don't drop the ballot in the box. You tell the presiding officer, I think I may have spoiled my ballot. Can I have another one? The presiding officer now takes that ballot that you had, and it's a spoiled ballot. It never gets into the box. So you account for everything. So on polling day, 200 persons showed up, or let's use the number we're using, 150. 150 persons voted. It therefore means when you're counting, that's after you balance off everything, you should find 150 ballots in the box. You pour the ballot on the table in the presence of the agents and everyone. And you are counting now to make sure you have 150 ballots. The presiding officer then holds the ballot up and shows the ballot. One for the triangle, he shows it to all the agents. And these people are satisfied, yes, that's one for the triangle. It goes here. And we count, and they all have tally sheets where they can total up. So today we had 150 persons coming to cast their votes. We have 150 ballots in the box. Nothing can happen. We are very fortunate here that we can count at the close of polls. There are some countries where once the polls close, that's it, the box is transported and the count is done the final day. Nobody has any idea how much ballots in the box or what happened. We are so fortunate that we cook and we eat at the same time. We cast our votes, we count, we know the results there and then. And this ends the poll. And once this is done and all the numbers balance off, the presiding officer therefore then calls the results, because he has to take the ballot box to the returning officer. The police moves along with them. But he calls the results, phone the returning officer and say, here's what, I have concluded my polling station and this is my count. 1 for the pentagon, 2 for the triangle, 4 for the rectangle. This results then gets put into an electronic system. You know, years ago, we were used to listening those things on the television and the radio. A01A, 6 for the triangle, 2 for the pentagon, 1 for the rectangle. And persons with a newspaper with that whole thing here are marking. Mind you, this process has been replaced by an electronic transmission. The system for transmitting doesn't do anything to the votes. So persons might believe, oh, well, they're showing the results online in an electronic computerized system, they can do what they want. The results that are displayed are the actual results that came from the polling station. We're just not using the radio for that. And in real time, so the presiding officer finishes, the polls close at 5, there was no one else in the line, we finished count at 5:40. By 5:41, the results for that polling station gets online in real time. We at the electoral office, you in the public, everyone gets the results at the same time. And if you can recall, previous election, by 6:30, the results were already known. This time around, the platform is going to be available again, and the results will be done live online in real time. From the close of polls, the results transmitted, and the results that are there. But note this, the first count on election night, this is just a preliminary result. It is not conclusive yet. Until the day after, that's the 24th, when the recount is done, then we can say, here's what, this is the final result. Because here's what, things can happen. Votes can change, which we don't expect, but it can happen. There's a possibility that there was some contention with a ballot, because in counting, if the agents are not satisfied, I don't think this person actually voted for the rectangle, and there is an issue, a note is taken, and when the recount is done, it's raised with the returning officer. So you may have 10 for the triangle and 9 for the square, polling nights, but the next day when you realize what's going on here, the numbers may change. One may go up or one may go down. When you look at it and you realize, here's what, this should be a rejected ballot because of whatever reason. So until the final count is done, which is done the following day, then the results are final. Again, we want to assure the public that there is no way someone can know for whom somebody voted, except in the case when an open vote is done. And there are conditions under which open votes can be done. Somebody comes in with somebody to assist them. A grandmother may come in with a grandson, and the grandson took the oath, I'm going to cast my vote for whom my grandmother says. But when the grandmother comes from the polling booth, something tells her, I'm not so sure my son actually voted for whom I wanted. So she can ask the presiding officer, can you verify that my grandson voted for the triangle? In a case like this, the presiding officer and all of the agents, everyone who is present there must witness. So it's not that the presiding officer say, yeah, he voted for the triangle, and you go, no, it's not like that. If the presiding officer sees it, all the agents see it also. But these people are under oath. And this is an open vote. And in a case like this, then everybody knows grandma really wanted to vote for the rectangle. This is the only circumstance where someone can know for whom somebody else voted. Again, the ballot goes in. The only mark on this is where you would have put your mark. There is absolutely no way. So the numbers on it here are going to be removed prior to inserting the ballot into the ballot box. The numbers are for a reference to know at the end, okay, if some matter arise, John Thomas actually came and voted. That's what. But we can't get into the box and says, John Thomas' ballot is this ballot. Cannot happen. Nobody knows it. Maybe if you ask John the 2 days after for whom you voted, he might not even remember who he voted for. Right? So this is our ballot. Again, the list is authenticated by security numbers to make sure that the list that is used is the list that is issued by the Electoral Office. We have done all we can in our power to ensure that the elections are free and fair. And by no means less, the elections have always been free and fair. Contrary to what is being said out there, well, we're used to it in that time of the year, but we have done all that we can. And the explanation today, I hope it can ease your confusion and give you the confidence. The process is a free and fair process. That's it from my end here.
Thank you very much. Very detailed, thorough explanation. I hope it has been useful to members of the media and, of course, to all viewers and listeners who are tuned in. Mr. Millette, you also brought the ballot box. Is there anything you wanted to illustrate as it relates to the box?
All right. So the box has a place here for the padlock to go. The box is open and persons can see it's empty. That's done on the day. The box then is closed. There is a lock on it. So in here, there is a lock that has to be only opened when the ballot box is open like this before the start of polls. This is unlocked, then your ballot box is open so the ballots can enter. The ballot box is covered down, and then the padlock goes on it, and it stays in the presence of everyone. There is a view here where the ballots can be inserted. So the ballots can be inserted here at the top. Once polling is closed, this is then shut. It cannot open unless the padlock is open. So this is shut, and the presiding officer now does his accounting. Once this is done, the only way he can get into the box is via the padlock. And once he opens the padlock, he empties the contents. Again, one thing I missed previously, after all the documents are counted, the tally is being done, the ballots and everything else is loaded back into the box. It is locked with a padlock, and it is also locked with a seal. Every seal has a number. The agents are going to record the number of the seal that is on the box. So the next day when the recount is to be done, the agents are going to ensure, yesterday the box left our presence with seal number 12345. When we are about to do the recount, I want to make sure that seal number 12345 is on the box before they open the box. This is the reason why the seals have numbers, but also on the form that is given, the number of the seals are there for the agents to record. So they know definitely we come back for the recount and this is the seal that's on the box. We are certain that nobody tampered with the box because a padlock could be opened and closed multiple times. But the seals are not reusable seals. Once they are put on, they must be cut to be removed. No seals have duplicate numbers. Every seal has its own number. So this again is to ensure that no tampering has been done. The agents are our chief watchers to ensure that the process goes on nicely. And the electoral office didn't just say, here's what, you can, candidates, you can submit agents. But we went into ensuring that the agents actually know what their responsibilities are, know what powers they have, what authority they have. They can question the presiding officer. So everybody knows what their responsibility is and the legal framework within which they can work. And this guarantees us a free and fair process.
Again, thank you very much for the information. It's certainly an edifying experience for me, so I can imagine it may very well be the same for many of our viewers and listeners. Mr. Morain, I know last week we concluded the process of claims and objections. You were able to give us a general idea as to the number, but as to further detail, we were not able to because you had not done the individual checks with the various offices. Do you have an update for us this morning?
Thank you very much, and I'm happy. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to do so this morning. As of the 7th, and that is only for that period, the 7-day period, we received 257. All right, that is inclusive of claims and objection. All right, we received that. Those constituencies that were basically heavy in terms of numbers were St. George's Northeast, St. George's South, and St. John's. All right, so let me just treat with St. George's Northeast because I think there's some misleading information in the public domain where that is concerned. Now, and last week I said that previously we were working on, I hear some 98 in the media. We were working on 38 objection, all right? 38 objections prior to that 7-day period we were working on. We have since then, at the publication of the current list, we have not at that time treated with all of them, but we have since then addressed that 38 objections that we've had. Now, we receive on the 7th, from one person, we receive 45, and that was inclusive of 27 of the objections we were working on before, right? So in essence, it's about 18. We received 15 from another, and I'm saying agency because I'm not sure if it didn't say, okay, you might know the person, but not the political party. And we noticed that there are 3 persons who are common to both of that, right? And then we received another 25. And there we had mostly deaths. Well, as I said, presumed to be dead, because we have since proven that some of the list of deaths are not always accurate, right? So we had that, and we had about 6 persons relative to, in terms of a residency issue. Let me just give you an idea as to what the objections really, in terms of the categories. So we have deaths. Deaths basically is our biggest category. We have residency as another one. We have migration in terms of someone claiming that someone has been out for more than the prescribed period. We also have an interesting one. Cannot be identified by that name and occupation. All right, interesting. We have that. And of course, the last one we have relative to people's on the police voters list. For the police voters list, this would be addressed by way of addendum. right? So we've begun, as a matter of fact, we have addressed that side already. Now, for the one with migration, this is a difficult one to prove, so we have to get added information. Because you just come in and say, okay, well, that Grenadian has been out of state continuously for above 5 years. We want more than that. That is difficult to prove. So that calls for deeper investigation. So I think based on the report from the registration officers or the returning officers, they ask for more information. Okay. The other one, also the one that speaks to you can't be identified by name and occupation, that too. Because saying that doesn't mean that, okay, is the person is not, because people carry different names, they carry different occupations and so on. So this would cause. So the big thing is debts, and we have been addressing the debts. But we have realized, for example, I want to highlight this one. In the South, St. George's South, someone brought a claim for about 61, dead person. And it was an interesting experience because our first, and I want to say to the public, our first line, we look at it, and because it's debt, you can't write to anybody. But if sometimes you're not sure, so you call sometimes. Because when we go, we cross-check it with the published list that we have from births and death. That's our first line. So we match this and we say, okay, well, look, is there any corresponding, in terms of the names and so on. The next thing you look at, because as I said, births and death doesn't capture all the debts that from some of Grenadian. So what we do, we then start to do our own search. And interesting in that scenario last week, when we were trying just call to assert, because we're calling now, which even though you call and you say, okay, the person died, we can't remove them, so we need information. So you say, okay, well, do you have a death certificate? Because that would authenticate that the person died. And, it was interesting last week that some people were didn't take it kindly. Because in some cases that we call, was the person on the other line, you're saying to them that, well, we have a claim here that you have died, and I don't want to make reference to what one of the persons said, and it's kind of been very frustrating. What was interesting, however, that person who filed the objection, when preliminary reported to that individual saying, look, they wanted to withdraw the claim. And we said, no, you can't withdraw the claim. It's already promised in practice. But I am just saying that to alert the public that when you put in forward an objection, you're not putting an objection for just objection's sake. You must have at least, you may not be conclusive, but you must have sufficient evidence. Because we are basically misleading the public, in terms of objections. And I think people need to understand this, right? And that is part of the issue. We've heard before in the public domain, that objections were filed. And there was nothing so, right? At that time, there was nothing so, right? So I believe we ought to understand the seriousness of the process. And as I said before, and I want to reiterate it here, that every Grenadian, we are responsible for free and fair elections. We are responsible, and that is a big part of it, the claims and objection, right? So Mr. Millette went through the entire process of the day, what happens. And I'm sure that people are in awe that this is how detailed the thing is. The next thing that we look at to really crumb us off is the list. And the list has to be, you can't just send us on a wild goose chase trying to look for information. Everybody busy, we have timelines to meet, and you have to go sometimes because we have to do it anyway. If an objection, we view every objection or claim as serious. But we want to assert the public that if you're going to file an objection, you must have some certainty that this is so, and not just send us on this wild thing. So that's where we are in terms of this. So some of the objections are still under active investigations, very much active, because we have to assert, because I can't remove someone, right? The supervisor is the one charged with removing someone from the list, but I cannot remove someone from the list unless it is conclusive, especially at this time. So I just wanted to alert the public where we are in terms of this.
Does the regulation speak at all, Mr. Morain, to what you just highlighted in terms of someone filing a misleading claim or objection?
Not really, because what happens to us in the end is just a waste of administrative time, because I don't think really maybe someone just maliciously would file it. I don't think so. I don't believe that for one moment. I am saying to you to check your information, because you might say this is so, and you might have reason to believe it. But it doesn't hurt for you to really cross-check to make sure that what you are putting forward is what you're putting forward. We have had situations where people look at the wrong list, and you say, but wait, even last week, you remember somebody called and said, okay, look, they have not seen the name. The name is on the online, but they have not seen the name on the list because they look at the wrong list. Because Mr. Millette would tell you the generation of the online is what is generating the list. You understand? So people have to be, assertive. Now, one of the things I also see happening with claims, right? Objection, and it makes it easier if the person can file, because claims, as I said, is filed on your behalf. Objection is you're objecting to someone else. And sometimes, for example, you might see somebody in the wrong PD, meaning the wrong polling division. And it is easier for us to address it when the person file a claim. Because that is less detailed, because you're coming to me and as you bring proof that, okay, look, I'm living here. It's easy then have to go through, because when we go to an objection now, we have to give notice and serve people to come in, as opposed to a claim. A claim is always, an easier investigation. You still have to investigate, easier than an objection. So some of the things, even if I think generally you want to see the process go forward nice. So if I see my friend and I realize, boy, something ain't right here, it's my better to say to your friend, file a claim. Observe that and file a claim, because that process is a lot shorter than if it goes to the root of objection.
And finally, to you, what's the status of the final voters list?
So let you remember? I didn't remember, honestly. But what we're going to do, we're going to furnish shortly, and we're going to give the breakdown as to the different constituency in terms of numbers, right? And I think people might be interested in terms of comparing constituency to constituency in terms of the numbers. That is, okay, what maybe at the 2018 election, what was the numbers like in that constituency? And so we will furnish you with that. But that was part of the homework I forget.
Okay, no problem. All right, so let's go now to questions from the media. I can see already that Linda Straker has a hand up. So Linda, good morning to you. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good morning to you, Philo, and Mr. Millette and Mr. Morain. My first question has to do with, for the first time, just like you, Philo, I learned a couple of things. The security ballot, the box, will be given to the presiding officer a couple of days in advance. Can they share with us what level of security that will be around these people's home in the event that somebody decide to do some sort of home invasion and specifically targeting the box? What kind of protection will be in the environment of these people's homes? My other question is, in terms of the ballot itself, can you share with us the grade or the quality of paper that is used? One of the complaints we had for the last election was some people felt it was see-through. People could have seen who you vote for. And so can you, I know there are different grades of paper. Some are thicker, some are lighter. Can you share with us the type of paper? And my final question for now, can you share with us whether or not mobile devices of any kind will be allowed to go, accompany any voter to the ballot station, well, to go and vote? What will be allowed and what would not be allowed that I can take with me? If I, for example, I went to the supermarket, I have my bag of groceries, my money, my phone, what is allowed to accompany me to that little space for me to vote? Thank you for now. do have.
Thank you for your questions, Linda. Mr. Millette, you'll take a go at them.
Okay, so the answer to your question in terms of the weight of the paper, what I can tell you, the quality of the paper, we've addressed the concern that was there last election, and we've done two things for that. One, to ensure that the paper is of a very high standard. And secondly, the design of the ballot. I want to hold this ballot up again. Previously, the ballots were designed with the candidates, and also the candidates are arranged alphabetically, right? So there is no ballot to say, well, all of that particular party candidates are first or second or third. The ballot is designed and the candidates' names are arranged alphabetically. So there was a lot of space between here. This time around, the ballot, the names are dropped right down at the bottom, and it's done in light of ensuring that there are multiple folds, so that by the time you reach to the top, even if you make your mark for the candidate who's right on top, there may be 2 or 3 folds before it reaches to the point where you have to stop beyond this line. So wherever your mark is going to be hidden a couple times with folds before you take it to the presiding officer. So this is going to add to the quality of the ballot. So the paper is of a high quality. I cannot tell you what the weight of the paper is, but I can also tell you, added to whatever the quality of the paper is the design of the ballot that ensures if you make your mark for your candidate right at the bottom, it might be folded 5 or 6 times before it gets to the top. So it is going to be concealed. However, in folding your paper and returning it to the presiding officer doesn't have to unfold your ballot. All he has to do is to ensure that you ink and tear off the counterfoil, the upper portion with the numbers and other things here. So he's not unfolding your ballot to look at the mark here. So this is what the process is all about. So we are quite satisfied that this time around, persons should not, again, we see what we look for, but persons should not have any complaints about the quality of the paper, nor people see who they make the mark for.
There was also a question about what's allowed into the booth with you.
Yes, thanks for that reminder. Upon entering the polling station, each of the presiding officers on the desk, they're going to have a container, and persons are supposed to not enter the polling booth with their mobile devices. So you're going to be asked to put your mobile device in that container on the table. It's going to be in full view of everyone. So you should not enter the polling booth with your mobile device, because taking photographs of your ballot is not permitted. We know with the technology, persons can have all kinds of devices to do whatever they're doing for whatever reason. Be it as it may, in an age of science and technology, it can work both ways. But here's what, you are not supposed to take photos of your ballot for any reason. And the location, the structure of the polling station is going to be designed in a way that is going to deter persons from even employing other means of being able to take photos. But you should not be entering there with your mobile device.
And the first question from her spoke to the protection or the security of the ballot boxes once they're handed over to the returning officers.
Presiding officers.
The presiding officers a couple of days before the poll.
All right, so the ballot boxes are packed at the electoral office, our office, and upon the day that is prescribed when the presiding officers are going to collect the boxes are transmitted or transported to the returning officer's office, where each person comes to collect his or her box. Upon collecting the box, that person has to keep the ballot box in safekeeping. Unfortunately, we don't have the manpower to be able to police every ballot box from the time they received it until election time. So the onus is on the presiding officers, who have been briefed already. We have spent some time working with them in terms of securing the ballot boxes. However, at all times, the ballot boxes are going to be locked, and we depend upon them, and what should I say? They would employ security measures to ensure that the ballot box is in safekeeping. We have never had instances before where upon election day, a ballot box was not being able to be presented. And we don't foresee any of this happening now. Nonetheless, security measures have to be put in place by the presiding officers once the box is in their custody. That's as much as I could say on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Millette. I see Nancy Maguire and Rena Pear have their hands up as well. Nancy, we come to you. Good morning. Rena, you will be next.
Good morning. At the last election, we had the observers from the OAS and CARICOM, and they made some recommendations about dealing with Commonwealth citizens and suggested the Parliamentary Elections Office create a declaration of residency to be used by Justice of the Peace. And they had other recommendations to amend the Act. Can you tell us if any of these things have been implemented since those recommendations in 2018? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Yes, the residency issue is one that was implemented, to make sure that the other one that they mentioned is an immigration matter. That's the one to prove whether the person is in Grenada, the time that they say they are in Grenada. So for instance, and they were suggesting that, which to me would make we decided would make the process cumbersome, because you can't make the registration process cumbersome. What they were suggesting is that person must bring, I didn't want to say a declaration, but a document from immigration to say that, look, I've been in the country, whatever, like that, okay? But really, it's the same thing that the declaration is saying, that the GP is signing. Now, and as I always say, publicly, that the GP has to make sure that when you affix your signature to something, that it is the truth, right? That's a responsibility. But we felt that if every Commonwealth citizen has to go to the immigration department to get a letter of such, it just makes the registration process very cumbersome.
Anything further from you, Nancy?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I just wondered if he could tell us how many Commonwealth citizens are registered for this election. Thank you.
That is a difficult question to answer. And if you recall me last week, I was talking about the limitation of the software that we have. You can't generate such report, so it's difficult for us to tell. It means that you have to go in manually and count this, and it can be a real painstaking effort. So we can't generate it readily. But it's something I think, as we look forward to improving, the software that we employ in terms of the registration process, we should be able to look at, that leverage where we can generate that kind of report, so we can tell, not just about the Commonwealth citizen, but also age range, different, how many new registrants you have within a particular period. Those kind of reports can be generated. But as it is now, the system is restricted where that is concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Morain. Rena, good morning. Please proceed with your question.
Good morning. I only have one question for now. My question is, can you tell us the amount of new voters we have for the list this term?
Rena, I think the supervisor addressed that question already. So do you have another question that you would like to pose at this time?
No.
Okay. Do we have any further questions from anyone present this morning? MTV, good morning.
I have questions.
Linda, let's take MTV and then we'll come back to you. MTV, go ahead.
Good morning, Troy Gill here, MTV News. My question is as it relates to the police officers who are scheduled to vote. There has been a concern with regards to some police officers who were allowed to vote on general elections as opposed to the day that they were scheduled to vote. I'm not sure if you dealt with this before, but can you share with us what may have contributed to this, if it is possible that maybe they were, after they joined the police force after the list was published? And if so, if that happens, will they be allowed to vote on the day of the general elections, that's June 23rd?
All right, thank you, Mr. Gill, for that question. Because of the design of the system, the electoral office is unable to move anyone from even a polling division. So if you are registered in the wrong polling division, we are unable to move you except you come and do the application all over. For some persons, they may say, but here's what, you have the info already. But in a situation like this, something so important as your electoral register, we have to ensure that any change that is made to it is initiated by the end user. So there are a lot of persons who were registered as regular citizens before they became police officers. So now that they are police officers, there is no automatic rollover to the police list. Upon registration, once someone is a police officer, a box is checked to say, here's what, this is a police officer, put that person on the police list. So if you were registered prior to becoming a police officer, now you're a police officer, you can't be sent to the police list. Everything happens upon registration. No changes can be made after registration. So even claims that some persons make, well, I voted here last time and now they put me there. The office can't put you anywhere. It is impossible. It cannot happen. What has to happen is once somebody becomes a police officer, they now have to go back to the office and do the registration process all over again, and then they get put to the police list. This is what happens. However, if someone during the last period that went with the claims and objections, we had persons claiming that they were on the wrong list. Police officers were saying, I am not on the police list, I am on that other list. But here's what. These persons are going to be allowed to vote on the police day because addendum would be issued to facilitate those persons. If they did it within the period, then changes were made so that person was able to re-register and get on the correct list. But if the changes, if the re-registration wasn't done, if they didn't have the relevant document at the time, the addendum would take care of this. However, on resumption of registration after the election, these people now have to go back to the office to get re-registered to find themselves on the police list. So this time around, persons who are police officers will be voting when the police vote via the addendum to the list. Again, when we have police officers who retired, we're supposed to go back to the constituency office and do that re-registration so that they can find themselves on that regular list. Unfortunately, there are some who didn't do that. So although they retired, they are still on the police list. In a situation like this again, addendum is going to fix that issue temporarily until these people go back to the office and say, I am now re-registering. It seems as though it's a bit archaic. However, this is to ensure the security of the process. We at the office cannot just do as we want and switch people from list or constituency. It cannot happen. Everything is done on the day of registration. And when you register, you are given a receipt that lists everything, the polling division, the constituency, and persons have to go through it and sign. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they just sign it without even looking at the contents. And at the end, they tell you the office put them there. You sign to say, this is where I'm supposed to be. If you have any doubt, you can query, you can ask before you leave the registration office. But once you leave the office, any change that has to be made, we have to call you back in with your documents to fix those changes.
Thank you very much. Troy, anything else from you?
No, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. Linda, we do have a couple minutes left. You indicated that you had more questions. Linda, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I didn't even realize the time. My question has to do with the supervisor of election mentioned that in one of the objection was someone claiming that this great person, I'm not too sure if it's a Commonwealth, is now born Grenadian, has not been residing in the island for the objection based on migration. So can he tell us if there is a time when a Grenadian who is outside of state become disqualified under the voters list or be unable to vote? Because some people are thinking, once you come back and your name on the list, you can vote. Now, to me, what I learned this morning is that somebody objected that even if the person's name was there, that the person has been too long outside for them to be able to vote. So can he clear that up for me? And then two other things. The pencil that will be used on election day, I've voted since 1990. I know it's a pencil that is used. I don't know if it's a pencil being used this time, but if it's a pencil, would it be sanitized after every person vote because we have COVID and so going on as part of public health? And then my final thing is, Mr. Millette mentioned that we will be using the electronic system to relay the results. What backup does the Parliamentary Election Office have in place in the event that electricity was to go? Because for electricity, you need the broadband and everything else. What backup is in place? Electricity might go nationwide, but a lot of us might have our cell phone charge up and it's following. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions, Linda.
Thank you very much, Linda. I mean, you had me chuckling with the last question, though, in terms of I never envisaged that electricity would have been out. But for your first question, actually, a Grenadian, if you are residing out of state continuously for more than 5 years, that comes into question. No, and for a Commonwealth citizen, continuously for a year. Now, Linda, one of the things and that's why it comes through objections, because we would not know, in terms of how long someone is out there continuously. So it comes through objection. But as I said earlier, we would have to prove that. We have to prove that. So we have to go through the process. The person will have to provide information, right? So it's about the proof. And then we can remove. We just remove, yes, the law makes provision for that, but it didn't say you just arbitrarily remove someone. So you have to, first of all, prove it, and then you can remove that person from the list.
In terms of power and ensuring that the display goes on as it's supposed to. So the results at the polling station are phoned in to the returning officer, and the hard copy of the statements of the polls are also taken there physically. Those we get copies of. In the event that power goes, we still have our hard copy where we can validate all the data, all the information that has been provided on that day. So in terms of the outcome, we are certain power or no power doesn't change what the outcome is. There is backup facility to ensure that the data is being put into that system. So since the data is being entered in the outside constituency offices, if there is some power failure there, back at the main office, we are able to enter data. So data can be entered from multiple locations. In terms of having power backup, all those have been considered already, and backup power would be there. And just finally, as you made mention of the mobile, the system is designed so, even with the security, but the data can even be entered via mobile device. So entering of the data is not a major concern in terms of power, but we have considered that, and we already have contingency plan in place to mitigate against such in the event it happens.
I think our other question spoke to the sanitization of the pencil or the instrument that voters will use to make their mark.
So since we are still in that period now, all of the polling stations have been equipped with sanitizing solution. Upon entry, every voter would be sanitized. And coming from the voting booth, sanitizing would also be done. So in terms of the practice for this, we are well aware the times that we're in and how we can safeguard every voter who comes to the polling station. So this has been considered, and that hole has already been plugged.
Sure, go ahead.
As Mr. Millette mentioned, the efforts to sanitize people, as they enter. I just want to appeal to the public to be cooperative. Because someone may feel, okay, well, look, there's no such protocol, so I don't want to do it. But it's for the protection and safety of everyone, and we want to encourage all concerned to make sure that they adhere to those basic things, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're not guilty of infecting someone. So we're asking, people to cooperate as much as possible in this regard.
Okay, I don't see any further hands up, so we can begin to put a wrap on things here this morning. Mr. Millette, any final thoughts or comments from you before we go?
So, just for the media persons, on Friday, we are going to be working along with the media persons to give a demonstration as to the display software and how it's going to be done, so they can familiarize themselves for the broadcast that they're going to be doing. And again, we want to assure the public that every measure has been put in place to ensure the secrecy of the ballots, and also the free and fair process is going to be achieved. We work along with our agents again and our presiding officer and poll clerks, and we ask them to be vigilant. Everything is going to be done according to the law, and we don't expect anything unfamiliar on that day. We know what citizens expect. We know persons might be on edge, some persons might be anxious, but you just go there, you follow directions, you follow the instructions given, you cast your ballot, you leave the polling station, and you wait for the results. It's going to be available on your mobile device, it's going to be available on the TV, radio, wherever, and you do your celebrating after, whichever side you're on. That's it from me. Oh, additionally, the police, when the police vote, on the day of voting, the police ballots would not be counted on the day of voting. Persons say before, oh, we can know who the police voted for. But what happens on that day, the ballots would be held until Thursday, 23rd, and the police ballot is going to be mixed with the ballots from another polling station. And only then is going to be counted. So saying the police, they're going to know who the police voted for, is not a true statement, because that ballot is going to be hidden in other polling stations for that final count on the 23rd, when it's going to be done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Millette, and I hope that clears up one of the questions I have seen in the public space over the last couple of days. Mr. Morain, final thoughts, comments from you as the supervisor of elections.
Thank you very much. In terms of this morning's session, I'm happy that, and I wanted to bring into the public domain the demonstration put forward this morning by Mr. Millette, because I believe it is so important, helping to maybe address some of the concerns. I think some of them are genuine concerns, but some people also are engaged in spreading misinformation. So I trust that this morning's exercise was able to bring that level of clarity necessary as we go forward. I also want to appeal to the general public as we get closer to polling day, and especially on the day, to exercise tolerance. Okay, you're going to get there, and I suspect people are going to go very early. There would be long lines, but you have to be patient. You have to, stay out the process, and be as orderly as possible, and make sure that at the end of the day, we have no unnecessary conflict in terms of what we're doing. Persons are encouraged when you get to the polling, you check, and we have the online check to make sure you are in the right polling station, because you can waste a lot of time only to realize that you are not in the right polling station. You have to go elsewhere and still wait, right? So that's something that we want to do. We want to appeal again. Last week I did it to employers to make the necessary arrangements to make sure that employees are given that time. As a matter of fact, it's an election offense. Given the time to cast the ballot. I see elections as a very serious thing. I mean, many people would have struggled for where we are now, and I think we should not deny anyone that opportunity to do so. So I want to appeal also to all the candidates to be responsible, and also as they share the various platforms, to help to inform, right, and not to basically spread misinformation directly or indirectly, so it can aid the process. At the end of the day, all of us are involved in this process. The electoral office, yes, but with no candidates, we don't have elections. So they are very important as well. So I want to encourage everyone. Let us take a positive, page as we go forward. We have been sharing information with the public, and we still say that we are there to answer any concerns, any questions that you may have as we go forward. So once again, thank you very much for your questions. Thanks for the listening and viewing public. And we continue to engage you as we march towards, our first step would be the 28th and then the 23rd of June, 2020. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morain. One thing just came to mind. Would persons be required to wear a mask when they enter the polling station? What's required?
We encourage people to do so, right? Our workers would be. So we encourage people to do that. But I'm saying again, we don't want to create a conflict. So that is just appealing to the public to recognize, it's still a preference, right? It's a personal preference, but we want to make sure, that people, do that. But I'm glad you brought me back and said, because let me just mention something. The ink inside of things, and I was encouraged yesterday from one of the training that we have, our final training for a particular area, to emphasize that to the public. Now, mostly ladies, I would believe, for those of you who carry very long nails, there are a prescribed way in which you must ink. It must go up to a particular period, section of your finger. So we are saying that finger, if it's only that one that you want to ink, please get the nails done, right? Because if you cannot ink on the day, you cannot cast the ballot, right? It means, therefore, that if you come early enough and that can happen, then you will have to go back and cut it and come back, right? But we are encouraging everyone to make sure that they vote already on the day. And that is, you get the nails intact because you have to immerse that finger into the ink. I just thought we should mention that, that everybody understands this. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's where we put an end to this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. Again, another very educational, informative session this morning with representatives from the Parliamentary Elections Office. We had Mr. Michael Millette, who is the System Administrator at the Parliamentary Elections Office, and of course the Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Elvis Morain. Just by way of updates, you may have already seen it in the news, but Grenada has signed the formal agreement with the Organization of American States for the International Observer Mission that will be mounted for the June 23rd poll. So our ambassador to the OAS, Her Excellency Yolan Smith, signed that agreement with the Secretary General of the OAS on Friday in Los Angeles. So we do expect to have the OAS on the ground, and we're also finalizing arrangements with the Caribbean community, CARICOM, to have their observers here as well. Both organizations having committed to mount the observer missions. So with that, we come to the end of this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. I'm Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us. The members of the media, thank you for being here, and do help in the sharing of the information to educate, to further educate and inform members of the public. And I want to say thank you as well to the GIS production team. Until next time, continue to be safe, everyone.